This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm your host, E.J. Iannelli. Today, in the Rogue Heart Media studio, I am joined by the singer, songwriter, and musician, Olivia Brownlee. So, welcome, Olivia.
Thanks, EJ.
Did I leave anything out of that constellation when I say singer, songwriter, and musician? Is there a fourth and a fifth and a sixth?
Oh, of course.
In the artistic constellation.
Absolutely.
I know you contain multitudes beyond that. But.
Yeah, many, and don't we all? But no, that's good for now.
One of the reasons I was so keen to kind of have a recorded chat with you is because you are musing on something that is the Oral History Project, and I'm sure it'll take on a slightly different name once things are a little more concretized. But right now, it's kind of gelling as almost as an extension to some degree of This Is Where You Live, which was songs celebrating Spokane.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about the Oral History Project as it's been gelling in your mind.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. It's absolutely a progression from the beginning of time. I tell people that like the first half of my music and songwriting, call it a career, is the navel-gazing songs.
But I think they're part of the territory. I mean, it's like high school poetry.
Absolutely.
It has to be navel-gazing.
Absolutely.
To some extent, yeah.
One must know oneself, to have any interest in looking beyond oneself. So that kind of morphed into like, okay, like, how can I, and I think it happened with, I wrote a musical about, the height of my codependency. I was like, this is how I process things, is through writing songs. And so I call it a one-woman show in 3-part harmony, where I have like myself, my inner housewife, and my inner pirate, and they have like a really brutal fight, and in the end they love each other.
And why the pirate?
Because I have a penchant for adventure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you associate adventure and exploration with sea shanties and okay.
Yeah, hard nod. and the sea in particular. The sea is unpredictable and it's risky and it has no need to be benevolent. And there's a lot about the sea that I associate with my concept of who God is, and the fact that God has no need to be benevolent and yet is, and that has kind of shaped my entire childhood and how I approach songwriting today. I don't talk about religion a lot anymore, but there's no denying the impact that it's had on my worldview.
No kidding. I wasn't even prepared to start into this territory so early, but I should have been prepared with you. We'll leap from the sea to the idea of a divine presence in the cosmos very quickly.
Yeah. Well, this is very normal for me. So
this one woman musical, and we have, you said it's the artist or yourself. And then the housewife?
The inner housewife.
The inner housewife and the inner pirate.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile these things or not?
Yeah,
or is that
great
what the
question,
musical
right?
is about? Yeah.
That is what the musical is about. And it reflects the time in my life where I did feel very split between those two trajectories. And that lasted probably a solid 10 years or thereabouts. Mm-hmm. And I feel very lucky that I arrived at a place where they could have some absorption into each other, and where I could have an opportunity to start a family, as well as be in a situation where I am encouraged to still seek adventure and be inclusive of everybody in my household in that sense. So I feel it, I know that it was close, it was very close, and the opportunity to not have all of that was available to me. So
yeah. And so this Oral History Project, or I should actually go back and say This Is Where You Live, is an extension of that, or was an extension of that musical, or were there steps in between?
There's steps in between. So I think of the musical as like, okay, this was the climax of my navel-gazing songs, shall we say. And then after that, I was like, well, now what do I write about? And that's when I heard for the first time really about Leadership Spokane, which is a local leadership course that kind of focuses on the servant leader model of running a business or just being in a community. Which, again, appeals to how I was raised with the benevolent deities. But also what appealed to me about the course was that it promised a lot of content for future songs and framed in a way that was very human and very interpersonal. And I was like, oh, well, I could do that course and then I could have 10 new songs just like handed to me through conversations. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. And I got to celebrate a lot of people that I really admire in town, not just the subjects of the songs themselves, but also a lot of local musicians who I featured on each song, a lot of local artists who I had do illustrations for each song, and I don't know, academics who I admire. I asked to read my copy and be like, can you help me shape this? So it was goofy. And that was scaling down. That was scaling back from, because if you're a DIY singer-songwriter career, sorry for the voice that I use when I say that out loud, by the way. It's self-effacing. And I don't know why I do it. I'll grow out of it, I'm sure. But when you're doing a self-made career that is an artistic one, it's easy to feel like you're screaming into the ocean, because especially...
Which is benevolent, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, it's a benevolent... is it? It has no need of me. And I was born in Los Angeles, and I know how cruel that town can be because it doesn't need to be nice to people who come there for industry.
Yeah.
So I get it. And I screamed into the ocean for a while, and I felt really, really bad when I didn't get a gig, or when somebody didn't call me back, or when somebody didn't want to buy my album. I felt really bad. It affected me personally.
But I would argue that experience contributes, because it is ego deflating. And I think that that contributes to a healthier individual, to experience that rejection.
Yeah.
It's the problems arise when you make the leap to instant success. And I think the number of folks who have probably done that are few and far between.
Fewer and farther.
Yeah. But, and it's hard to be grateful for the rejection in the moment, but it can be extremely humbling. And probably contributes to a more well-rounded person today.
You make a really excellent point. Yes, and I'm certainly a person who can use some ego diminishing. I'll take any chance I can get. Not really. I find it really scary, but it's also really good for me. But and you're right. All of those experiences have contributed to a more mature and fuller Olivia. At the same time, I don't think that human beings were meant to create art on a global scale, with a global scale in mind. I think that that's a little unrealistic, and maybe I just don't know what it looks like.
And was that your ambition then?
I think that's everybody's ambition.
To create art on a global scale.
So the phrase you hear a lot, or at least used to, was get your music out there.
Right.
And out there means on the internet, and the internet is fairly global. You can find things if you know how to look for them.
But that has also changed
so
too.
Much.
And, we're not that far apart in age. And, for my formative years were so much about the demo tape.
Yeah.
Or the demo CD.
And in the manila envelope. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this was, on the cusp of the internet. The internet was just kind of a glimmer in the Department of Defense's eye at the time. And so, so much came down, and that DIY aesthetic was really valued. And so certainly during the 90s, and some of the bands that I respected most, and we can get into the whole, indie aesthetic and the value of maintaining that, and the dangers of selling out. But maybe that's an extended conversation. But as far as getting your music out there, it was very much about the demo tape. And I don't know if the emphasis was so much on the global at that time, or making it big was a global thing. I'm not sure.
No, it wasn't. It was more on the labels.
Right.
The big companies that were, making people famous.
Yeah, they were the career makers based
exactly.
in LA,
Yeah, and about.
Yeah.
But yeah, now the labels have kind of had like a grotesque death over time, and the internet now it's really Spotify. If you can like get your music distributed to streaming services like Spotify or Pandora, and you can tell your followers, your dozens and dozens of followers, that you're streamable on all your favorite streaming platforms. That's how you get listened to now.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
And I would argue that yes, that lends itself to idea of a global art or making art for a global audience, simply because the internet is so accessible and so conceived of in that way.
Right.
Like it completely loses the local focus.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And back to where I was going with that, I don't know that that's altogether healthy for a human body to be thinking of in that scale.
Yeah.
Which is why I did like, if I just focus citywide, maybe that's, if I can get 300 people interested in in these songs about them, then maybe that will feel better to being a body on the planet in this moment in time. And it certainly did. And that's why from there, I scaled back even farther. I was like, what? Because I had a friend one time, we were talking about culture. And he was like, I think the smallest unit of culture is a household. I was like, I love that metric. I still chew on that sometimes when when I need like a metaphysical piece of gum. I'm like, households. And so that's where I started thinking about oral histories and how that has been a missing aspect of being an interpersonal human in our culture for a long time, partially because we've been such a successful recording culture for a few millennia. But yeah, I'll have the pleasure of being on the TEDx stage in January, and this is part of what I'm going to talk about: is what does it mean to revive oral traditions in a recording society?
Yeah. And well, I think you can have, they're not mutually exclusive. You can have oral history and recordings. And in fact, some of the earliest recordings were attempts to capture that oral history. Exactly. And so when we think back to the earliest days of recording and putting, sound to wax cylinder, a lot of it was an attempt to say, these mundane aspects or these stories or whatever that seem so ephemeral, because that's what oral history. It's weird that oral history occupies this duality where it's very much in the moment, but it's also got this legacy that is passed down through generations.
Yeah.
So are you aware of that duality, and that's what you're attempting to capture with this oral history project? Yeah,
maybe capture is not the right word. Maybe honor. Because I think it is a biological instinct to storytell and to do it interpersonally and intergenerationally. And the fact that we can do it intergenerationally to an extent, like you don't even have to be alive for me to hear your story. Yeah. That's amazing. That's magic. And what we're doing right now, we're having a conversation. We're able to make eye contact. We're able to see each other's gesture and body language. We laugh. You don't hear a lot of laughter in early recordings. You don't in books. Humor was a thing that didn't come till much later after the printing press was invented. So it's there's still, even though we have recorded so much, even on the internet with all these videos and audio and all of this stuff that this is what it meant to be human on this day in this place. It still misses something about being interpersonal in real time and space, I think. Yeah. So I really I feel myself becoming a very fierce advocate of drinking songs and lullabies and
sea shanties
and sea shanties. But yeah, and kind of trying to follow in those footsteps in the ways that I write songs. How can I reflect? One of the songs on the "This Is Where You Live" album was trying to mimic the sound of a Swainson's thrush. Right. And what's in the environment around me right now, in the natural environment, that I can reflect. Maybe that thrush will go extinct in 100 years, and people are like, oh, maybe this is kind of what it sounded like, even though they'll have the thrush recording. But the fact that I reflected it, Olivia Brownlee, who wrote songs, means to a future listener, like, oh, she liked it. There was something likable about that in that moment. I don't know.
And so you are envisioning a component of musicality, because that is so much of who you are, to this oral history project. So as you're kind of thinking about the broad parameters and the shape that this might take, are you envisioning different songs that capture different people's stories in a very, Springsteen-esque manner? Are you, are you thinking of a series of songs that maybe, capture even the dynamics of a household or households, given that is the smallest unit of culture? So yeah, have you thought along those lines yet, or are those ideas still kind of coalescing?
I mean, it's not so much that they're coalescing as like I haven't worked with a lot of people in this direct vein of composition yet, So it could go any which way. Something I've been doing a lot recently, actually, is co-writing. There's a local poet named Travis Knott, and he has been collaborating with a lot of local songwriters to songify his poetry.
Oh, very cool.
Very, very cool. And so we'll sit together for 2 hours, and I'll read through his poem, and I'll like have the guitar in my hands and be like, it feels like it's in like a drop D. I feel like a 6/8 feeling coming on. I feel like, and then, the song will slowly emerge over an hour and a half, and then we'll record it on a voice memo. And now we're currently recording his second album.
Oh, that's super cool.
It feels so meaningful, because these are songs now, were poems, now songs, that are capturing moments in his life where he felt something very real. And the fact that we as songwriters get to share in those feelings with him, and like, again, the interpersonal, like, yeah, I directly relate to the feelings you are feeling in this poem. Even though I have no way of knowing what your life is like. Our lives are extremely different. But a lot of compassion is available in these kinds of collaborations.
And what is he conveying in these songs? And obviously, poetry is going to take on different flavors, and that's the topic of poetry. But, you had made reference to the navel-gazing aspect. And I think some folks might hear poetry and they might think, oh, then it is inherently navel-gazing. Is there a navel-gazing component, or even, let's put a better spin on that, a philosophical component to these songs, or are they more observational?
Definitely philosophical, I feel. And they're so personal, and some of them are quite grim, and some of them are hilarious. But all of them are extremely human. You've got like unrequited love, or love that is impossible, or like here is a childhood memory that I never want to forget, and I don't want anybody associated with me to ever have to forget.
Yeah.
Let's put it in a catchy song. And I would argue that any art is navel gazing. Like, even if this is, I love journalism and have fancied myself as, a fake journalist in the past. And there is an element of journalism in the kind of work that I do now. Just talking to people and be like, tell me your story. What do you want people to know about? But I would be kidding myself if I were trying to be objective about it. I think a really critical component into how I want to filter these stories and process them and think about them and remember them is personal for me. You're like, yes, and this is the part of your story that I personally connect to very, very deeply. It is not difficult for me to put music to this right now.
And when you talk about co-writing, it's kind of a different sort of inspiration, because when you are a songwriter and a lyricist and putting lyrics to your own music, or vice versa, or putting music to your own lyrics, the fact that you can draw inspiration from somebody else, I would assume that kind of manifests itself in a different way.
Sure.
Because even though the emotions might resonate with you, and there's a certain degree of empathetic connection there, it's also somebody else's words, and so maybe with that distance, the creativity takes a different shape.
Yeah, it's super, and this is why it's like, okay, well, I don't have a really defined template or plan about how to help people make their oral histories into songs, because it happens so differently with everybody. Like with Travis, it's like finding the music in his words. And with Rick Clark of Giving Backpacks, it was like him telling his story to our Leadership Spokane class. And one of his lines about his turning point in life was like, that's the refrain. That's the chorus. I'm not going out like this. I'm not going out this way. I mean, like I can sing that right now.
Well, and that's the power of music. And I have always, and I mean, I'm certainly not alone in this, but felt music very deeply, and just it holds such a special place for me. And I'm so protective of certain songs. And again, that's not a unique experience. And I think it's certainly something that pretty much every teenager should feel at some point, because that's the epiphanical moment. But yeah, when those moments happen where you're like, this person has captured something emotional in both word and music, that resonates with me on a soul deep level, and it really gives. I mean, much like the name of this podcast takes its name from a Gustav Klimt quote, which is "Art as a line around your thoughts."
I wondered about that.
A song like that ends up putting a line around maybe your thoughts or your emotions, and suddenly everything becomes a little more real. It's validating. And so that's why I have always had a very special and very personal relationship with music and the music that I like, because it resonates with me on that kind of soul deep level.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a question for you.
Okay.
Would you say it was you're probably thinking of 1 to 3 songs in particular. Would you say it's like, it is the words in those songs that really resonate with you, or the music of the songs?
Oh, that's a good question.
And not that these are extricable.
Yeah. I the most beauty, I think, comes from when they are all of a piece, and you can't imagine separating those two. And of course, just like you can be in the food or in the mood for different foods at different times, and you can say, I like all these things equally, but right now I'm really in the mood for a ham sandwich. It's the same thing with music. Like, there are times in my life when jazz is the antidote to whatever ails me.
Yeah.
Or it's something that, or like classical chamber music, for example. But I'm very much a product of the 90s indie rock scene. And so those are the songs that resonate with me. And so I'll go back to, a particular Jawbox number, for example. Or there's a band called Swell out of San Francisco that I just adored, and just made music that, you really think it's for you. And to go back to the co-writing aspect that you were talking about, when you're co-writing these songs, when you are developing that music that complements those words, I would guess that for Travis, that when you create a tune or a melody that captures the spirit of those words, then he feels something special as well. And yeah, so it can be mutually rewarding.
Very, yeah. We've had some very mutually rewarding songwriting sessions. It's really, I could go on and on about that. Yeah, it's good stuff.
But, you have had a lot of pressure on you to produce, and I don't know if it takes the fun out of creativity. Sometimes I think some of the best things are produced under deadline. But you've been doing a song a month club for, what are we're now in the 123rd month of that?
123rd song. It'll be 11 years come October.
Wow.
At the end of this month, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing, because I think endeavors with that lifespan are pretty few and far between. Talk me through the genesis. I mean, even in I just think of how much has changed in the past 11 years, and how the environment in which you're creating those songs and releasing those songs has changed. So yeah, let's do 123 songs in a nutshell. What led to this project?
It was mostly because I put out 2 DIY albums. Even the second one was called The Second Album, and I had it printed through Oasis. And it was, I was like, this is great. I'm a real musician. And looking back on it, I'm like, good job, Olivia. And also, none of these songs sound like each other. There's no through line. You just had, 8 songs, and here they are. and I because, and genre is a product of the industry, right? But I tell people I write in a lot of genres just because I like a lot of different kinds of music, and I don't listen to a lot of music recreationally, weirdly. Cobbler's kid syndrome. Yeah. I love silence. But I really like it when things are good and easy, and that can be captured in recordings, and I've heard those recordings. I've been to those live shows. I grew up around these musicians, and it's hard to, when you have a collection of 20 songs that don't sound anything like each other, you're like, what do I do? So in 2015, I was like, well, nobody's buying albums anymore anyway. Nobody has a CD player in their car anymore in 2015. Yeah. Maybe I'll just do singles for a while. And it was around that time that I had heard of Patreon. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just do 1 song a month. I'll release 1 single a month for 5 months, see if I like it. If I like it, I'll just keep going. And I liked it. It hasn't made sense to stop yet.
11 years later, though, here we are. Yeah. But that, we sit here, well, maybe I sit here and lament the death of the album because I value the album as a complete product, as a whole. Yeah. And I tend to think, let me coin a phrase, albumistically.
I like it.
And the streaming services, so whether you're talking Apple Music, whether you're talking Spotify or Pandora, are much more a la carte. Mm-hmm. They're much more song driven. Mm-hmm. And so you'll create a playlist that is made up of a number of songs. So in some ways, what you were doing lent itself very well to the streaming services. Yeah. So how does it feel to be ahead of the curve?
I feel amazing. Thanks, CJ. Thanks for seeing me. No, and there, even with the album, there were problems because you would spend $20 on an album, and there were only 3 songs you were interested in it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. On some albums.
On some albums.
On the best ones, it was every song. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I and in those 123 songs, there are a couple of albums. There's the One Woman Show in 3-part harmony. There's the This Is Where You Live. I've included those in the singles.
Oh, okay.
And at this point, you can compile yourself an entire jazz and swing dance album, an entire cowboy album, an entire funkish album. Everything's ish, but it's doable now. But not because I was like, I'm going to write 10 funk songs. They just came over time.
And it does allow you to indulge in that whim, and so I'm guessing that kept it fresh, because I have to say, the pressure to, come up with a melody, come up with a tune, and then come up with lyrics to match, and then record that, and gather the necessary instruments and gather the necessary musicians to put out a song month after month after month would seem awfully daunting.
Well, I don't write a new song every month. Those are just like backlog.
Well, but yes and no. I mean, you have enough output that then lends itself to this. Yeah. So maybe you weren't necessarily chasing this deadline, but at the same time, it does put a particular onus on you because you have this commitment that you've made for yourself. Yeah. Whereas you damn well better have a song for the next month.
Yeah. Or else you don't get paid. Actually, that was how Patreon started out. If you didn't produce, you didn't get paid that month, or for that project. But now they've, through pressures from the outside world, they've had to scale to a subscription-based model. So whether or not you produce, your patrons are giving you a monthly paycheck, basically. However, it was funny when you first used the word pressure at the beginning of this topic. I was like, pressure from what? Because I don't feel pressure. It's actually a gas to call people and be like, okay, we're gonna do this at Andy's office, and are you available on these dates? And sometimes it's really frustrating because people don't get back to you in time for that to be this song of the month. And then you just know, okay, that wasn't the song that we were gonna do this month. And you do a different song. But it's part of the other impetus for the project was I hate recording. I hate it so much. It is so stressful. I don't like playing music for nobody. I don't like playing music for the microphone.
Yeah.
So, and I don't like the technical aspect of it. I can record myself. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy recording. I don't enjoy editing at all. I would be a brilliant video editor if I had any love of it. And maybe I can chalk that up to having, subpar equipment and software. But in general, I'd rather pay other people hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it for me.
That's so interesting because as a listener, I always found it, after I had heard it enough times, it was something that I began to regard with skepticism because, you would have bands say, we want to capture the live sound, the raw live energy on this recording. Yeah. And it's probably because recording is such a faff, and to strip it down to its most basic elements, and that's kind of insinuating that a live show is basic, but maybe more basic than the recording studio. Whereas I always valued the production enhancemmuents that came through recording. Yeah. And so, if I'm listening to the Smiths, it's definitely going to be, I'd much rather listen to the Smiths on record than live because the record captures so much more acoustic nuance.
Have you been to a Smiths live show?
I have not been to a Smiths live show, and I mean that ship has sailed by this point well and truly. But yeah.
But you've listened to live recordings.
Oh yeah, like Rank is a live recording.
I see, and I can see that. I have a lot of live recordings where I'm like, I'm not going to release that. But the energy in the room at the time was absolutely incandescent, and I wish that the performance on the recording had been better because everybody in the house was having such a lovely time.
Yeah.
But c'est la vie. And certainly there is an aspect to production that can chase all the life out of a song.
Yeah.
I've had that happen too, and I had to release it because of my project. You're like, oh well.
Well, there are the pressures, and so even though you might not necessarily have a strict deadline, there the pressures that you impose upon yourself and the deadlines that you impose upon yourself. So they exist. They are real, whether exposed or imposed externally or internally.
And here's what I love about that. I've had to release recordings that I wasn't proud of, and I actually am glad that happens, because what I'd love for people to, if people learn nothing else from Olivia recording 123 songs in a row, is that the recording is not the song. The song is alive. It's a living cultural product. It is a product of culture. And it is alive, and it has a life outside the recording. And if you want to be a part of that life, come find me.
A very good point, but one that I wonder if it doesn't exist at odds with the idea of the Oral History Project.
Oh,
because
why would you think that?
Because this is something that is then recording an oral history and putting it to tape and almost establishing that definitive edition.
Yeah.
And so it almost plucks it from this very ephemeral ether that we were talking about, where oral history is and storytelling can be a very ephemeral art, and then creates something that that exists as kind of a definitive version.
This happens.
Does it not rob it of some of its life, 100%. Or say yes, this is the primary version, and the live version is almost secondary?
So this is exactly the dichotomy that like sizzles inside of me every day, right? So what I would love, and it makes me sad when the recording does become the song. If you do the song different, like I feel this way about Buckets of Rain by Bob Dylan. He created this beautiful, intricate guitar part to this really cute folk song. And when I perform that song and I just do it as a cute folk song without doing the guitar part, I think people are like, why aren't you doing the song right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I have feelings about, and I liken it to like a bug collection.
Okay, okay.
You know, because people who collect bugs, you stick a pin in it and it's dead, and it is, you know, you can say that it is a bug, but really what it is the vestige of a bug.
Yeah.
Or, you know, pressed leaves. They're beautiful, but they're not, there is the essence of the leaf still there? Or is it just like a picture of a leaf, you know?
Yeah, I'd have to go back to Nabokov because I'm sure he's got some thoughts on this, and he was famously, what is it a lepidopterist, someone who
Sounds like a dinosaur.
someone who collects butterflies.
Okay.
So he was a very famous butterfly collector, and I'm trying to think what his thoughts are on the subject because I'm sure he reflected on this and the idea of sticking a pin in something alive and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and actually chloroforming it beforehand and then sticking a pin through it.
Well, certainly.
I would hate to think it does kind of rob the recording of some of its magic when you think of it as this kind of chloroformed version with a pin stuck in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the recordings is how they are disseminated. The recordings is what enables us to listen to them over and over again and steep ourselves in them if we do not have the advantage of, you know, having the musician or musicians able to perform that song.
So here's my argument.
Okay.
I call bullshit. I think that if it can be separated from people, that it is not culture. If you can, because you can separate a person from their CD or their vinyl record. You can't separate E.J. Ionelli from the song he loves the most.
Right.
You could sing that entire song for me right now.
You wouldn't want that, but yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
I would. I would sit and listen to the whole goddamn thing because it meant something to you. And whether you wanted to tell me the whole story of what it meant to you or not, I would know that it meant something to you because you remembered it. And I think that is an incredibly important part of our biological composition is memory. And Socrates was a big proponent of this. He was like, don't do the alphabet. Like, the alphabet is dumb. You know what that will do? You know what writing things down will do? It will interrupt your impulse to remember things. You don't write things down to remember them. You write them down to forget them. Mm-hmm. And I see that happening more and more, actually, with how able we are to record everything. We spend so much money on digital storage, for example, like tens of thousands of pictures in digital storage. I have a friend who just recently lost like 10,000 photos on a hard drive that fell apart, you know? And like we hear stories like that and we're like, you're like, oh my God. It feels like a big death. It feels like a big loss. And my question is like, why does that need to feel like, I get it. I have a lot of pictures and videos and recordings. Also, I want to sing with people. Mm-hmm. I don't want to sing by myself. When I moved back to Spokane, I'd come from LA when I went back as an adult to do the music industry and see how that went. I came back to Spokane. I was like, man, I really don't want to do solo shows anymore. I've been doing that for 5-6 years and I'm over it. It's just so boring and lonely. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't give my songs any chance really to mature.
Yeah.
Because so much of a song finds its life in the folk process where people are singing it and they remember some parts better than others. And then, you know, somebody invents a harmony that didn't go with the original chord progression. So you change the chord progression to match their harmony because it's cooler.
But that's got me thinking. I mean, when you are the originator of a song, it's a very different relationship to my relationship with a song because I'm not a producer of music.
Sure.
And however much I identify with that song and you know, however strong that personal connection is, I did not write it. Man, sometimes I wish I did. But yeah, and so the relationship is very, very different than it is with someone who actually creates a song, you know, from, you know, it manifested itself out of their soul.
Sure.
And so I can understand why you would have that relationship and want to share that experience and share that creative product with an audience. Whereas for me, it's a very almost selfish relationship and one-on-one. And I don't apologize for that too much, but when I talk about that protective relationship, it's but somebody. It doesn't change the fact that somebody else produced that. However much I identify with it, it's not entirely mine. And so maybe that's why I have a slightly different take on the recording and recorded media.
Sure.
Because I'm more of a consumer of songs rather than a producer, and maybe that doesn't do it justice, but
yeah, I'm making faces.
Yeah.
And we get this language. This language is a product of our civilization, which is really, really based on a concept of ownership. It's just embedded in our language. Here's my purse. Here, this car is our car, and here's your toy. And
this is my land.
This is my land, and this is the food that I grew and am eating. Blah blah blah. And it is, in my mind, it's one of the few things that makes it important to be like, no, this is my song. You can't just have it and put your name on it and make money from it instead of me. That's not okay. That's not okay in our society. But what you're talking about is different. To me, as a songwriter, if it were my song or my recording that you were like, wow, I wish I'd written this song, what I would say is like, well, then I wrote it for you.
Which is a very generous impulse. And I certainly would appreciate that. And I think many songwriters do take that approach, which is why it is so important for songwriters to perform in front of an audience. Whereas, again, my relationship with music is a little different, where it's a very solitary thing. Even going to shows, and maybe this is unique to me, the concert experience is always, maybe it destroys that illusion of intimacy. And it destroys that sense that, or it threatens that personal connection you have with the song, because now you're suddenly sharing it with others. And there's a selfish impulse in me that I thought you did write this for me and me alone.
Have you ever been to a concert where that illusion wasn't shattered, where you felt a part of something large and personal?
I'm sure I have, but there isn't a moment off the top of my head. The last concert that I saw in town was when Built to Spill came through, and they did There's Nothing Wrong with Love in its entirety. I take that back. That's the last rock concert that I went to. Actually, the most recent concert I went to was Rachel Bade McMurphy's
Imagine Jazz.
Her Imagine Jazz project,
That project.
And and what was so remarkable about that, and again, jazz kind of changes how you interact with the music, and so there's a very organic process, as to jazz, where you have solos, and there's that expected spontaneity, and that lends itself. And which is why I'm partial to jazz in that regard, is because you do have the sense that this is a very unique experience. Something is being created in this moment, and it is that snowflake that will never be captured again.
Yeah, and I put the audience in there too.
Yeah.
I think there are notes that wouldn't be played if EJ wasn't in the audience. Not because they knew you were there personally, in the flesh, but, we all changed the room.
What is your next gig coming up into October and November?
I'm gonna have to look at my calendar. Into October. Hang on.
Because for the longest time you have been performing as part of it's hard to imagine like acts that you're not involved with, because it seems like here in town. Olivia Brownlee has associations with everything. So you were with Rockabilly Space Force.
Still am.
Still are. And then Zonky Jazz.
Yep.
Which are also kind of a piece as well.
Yeah.
So you see some overlap there.
Yeah.
But you're still performing with them fairly regularly.
Yep, and those are both projects of Garen Hertel, local historian, and now the founder of Hot Club of Spokane and 501c3.
I am determined at some point in the very near future, Garen will be
Let's
here
get him
because
in here.
we talked about his the history project or his oral history project that he was doing and capturing that on video, and King's Guide to Spokane, and again, just a kind of fascinating and very multifaceted person.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it's been such an honor and a pleasure. And I've told people this before, that he's the person who got me to move back to Spokane.
Oh, really? I had no idea.
Yeah, because I was in LA, and he and I have a very sibling relationship, and we, when in 2017 when I was still in LA and kind of losing the thread, what do I do next? I got on a long philosophy phone call with Garen Hertel, and we were just shooting the shit, and finally at the end of an hour, he was like, "Oh man, don't you wish you were back in little old Spokane and had a menial 20-hour-a-week job, and the rest of the time you were in an awesome jazz band?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what I want." You nailed it. I'll see you in a month.
And that was made into that was made manifest into a reality, because that's exactly.
And met my future husband on the first gig.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, it was super fortuitous then.
Yeah, very. Worked out.
So are you planning on doing solo gigs, coming up and into the autumn and into the winter? Or is it,
There's actually, it's funny that we were talking about intimacy, because, when you're on Patreon and doing this kind of subscription model, and you don't have merch to speak of to sell to people anymore, I've been trying to explain that through shows. I did one last October that I called A Date with an Artist at Hamilton Studio. And I set up a little cocktail table and dressed pretty. And I pretended that I was on a date with the audience. Because I was like, I figure you deserve to get to know me before you subscribe monthly to whatever this is. And this November, I'm planning on doing a follow-up, a second date. Maybe call it the courting couch. Those little S-shaped couches.
Oh, that's super cool.
Be a little bit closer.
Yeah, I think you were one of the, as Don Hamilton was kind of getting the listening room in its kind of formative stages, you were one of the earlier concerts in there, or the earlier performances.
Yeah, Garen and Don were able to come to an agreement for having the Jazz First Sunday on a regular basis, and that we got to be a lot of the first concerts in that way. And of course, Madeline McNeil and her Tom Waits project has been there. I did my show. I feel like the Hamilton Studio is like a home away from home venue right now,
Yeah. So we have touched on a variety of topics, and kind of I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of bounce around.
Yeah, me too.
Because it just allows us to touch on different tangents
and reflects the playground of my brain.
Yeah, and I welcome that, because so often we're very these conversations tend to be very event and project focused, and it's just nice to kind of step back and navel gaze a little bit and philosophize and get introspective, because I value the opportunity to think about my relationship to music, for example, and so it's much appreciated. But you are hip to the lightning round, right?
Oh, hit me. Yes,
okay.
I remember.
We have a lightning round.
Okay, lightning round me.
And usually this is necessitated, maybe that's a strong word, but it's nice because it allows us to touch on different topics that we didn't touch on during the interview.
Right.
Whereas that's not necessarily the case here. So it's not kind of an interview that follows the interview in this case. It's just an organic extension of that. Excellent. So lightning round. These are all questions directed at you.
All right.
It's not going to test your knowledge, but it is going to
test my patience.
That too. Okay. First one is an either or question. Okay. You're forced to ride around in either a clown car or an ice cream truck.
Clown car.
And the ice cream truck must always be playing its jingle.
Which jingle?
Oh, I hadn't gotten that specific.
Can I decide which jingle?
You can decide which jingle, yeah. So clown car, always driving around in a clown car or always driving around in an ice cream truck that is playing a jingle of your choosing?
Okay, I would ride around in the ice cream truck if they play the jingle that RZA especially wrote to replace Turkey in the Straw.
Okay. Can you shed some light on that?
Wu-Tang, RZA?
No, I'm not. Yeah,
No?
but
Okay.
I'm not familiar with the song that was written to replace Turkey in the Straw.
Well, there was just like one of those 1-minute documentaries where, it came up for me because during COVID, a lot of us music educators and folk singer-songwriters were like, oh, a lot of the American folk canon comes from minstrel shows. Can we do better?
Yeah. I can understand why there's a little ambivalence about that. Yeah.
So that is a greasy topic, and I love digging into it, but I need time to do it interpersonally.
Yeah.
But so put a pin in that. That's when the auspices of the internet spiders were like, oh, you might enjoy this 1-minute documentary about how RZA, Wu-Tang, has written an alternative to Turkey in the Straw for ice cream trucks to play.
No kid. Yeah, I was not aware of that. No.
Yeah.
So if provided the ice cream truck played RZA's alternative version to Turkey in the Straw, you would be game for that over
Absolutely.
the clown car.
I mean,
Okay.
either is fine, but
Okay. Yeah, I just, for me, the biggest conundrum of that either or was the expectations that you set when you drive around with the jingle playing, or the clown car. If you're driving around in the clown car, people automatically expect you to be funny. And if you're driving around in the ice cream truck, people automatically expect you to be vending ice cream. Yeah. And so, okay. Yeah.
I can deal with expectations.
But yeah, I should have predicted that you would have seen things in a different light, and I'm grateful for that. If you had to eat one dish for the rest of your life every day, what would it be?
The Rock and Be Ranch Cowboy Supper Show Chuck Wagon meal.
What does that involve?
That is roast beef off of a grill made out of a severed water tank, 50-gallon water tank. That is pinto beans and a boiled potato. That is homemade barbecue sauce. If you're feeling saucy, you can get a little side of applesauce and a pea salad, cornbread. Yeah, it just never got old. 20 years.
You're just full of surprises because I expected anyone to take a moment to pause and reflect on what that would be. And the fact that you had an answer at the ready, rooted in both nostalgia and a gourmand's palate. I'm so pleased. All right. Maybe this one will give you pause.
All right.
You have an opportunity to visit a fictional place. What is it?
Well, there's so many. Yeah, it gives me pause. I'll just go with the most recent one.
Okay.
Momo's Amphitheater.
Okay. Give us some context to Momo's Amphitheater.
Do you know The Never-Ending Story?
I do.
Based off a book by Michael Ende, who also wrote the book Momo, which is another kind of fantastical realism tale and has a lot to do with time and subjects that we've been talking about, like imagination and play and oral history and interpersonal dealings. It starts off with a little girl who is lost and homeless. Maybe not lost, but she doesn't have anybody or anywhere. And she just kind of plants herself in this old abandoned amphitheater outside of town. And the townspeople, it's a poor town, they notice that she's there and they're like, do you want us to take you to like services? And she's like, nope, been there, not good. And they're like, cool. Well, we'll bring you food sometimes if you want. She's like, okay, as long as I can just stay here and not bother anyone.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. It sounds like it's a very different animal to the story that's told in Never-Ending Story. So, you talk about, is it the word you used, fantasy realist?
Sort of, yeah. Because like in Never-Ending Story, it's kind of similar there where they have Sebastian is in our world, and he reads a book and is absorbed into the story and ends up saving the world.
Right.
Both worlds.
Yeah.
And I think the link between the two for me through the author is the imagination aspect. And this is one of the most grossly underutilized superpowers of the human experience that I think I see going by every day right now. And even kind of like patronized. Oh, you know, they have to use their imagination because they don't have the, you know, the Xbox.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're poor, you know?
Yeah.
And I few things fill me with rage as much as like the implication that the imagination is something that you have to resort to.
Yeah, I usually hear of it framed in very different terms, and there is a lament for the death of the imagination to some extent, because especially now with AI, and that's a whole nother can of worms, whole nother topic, but that we are able through verbal prompts to see a computer's rendition of whatever we might be imagining. But I am totally with you on the fact that it is one of the most underutilized gifts of the human experience.
This big old brain.
Yeah. And conjuring what isn't, and you know, it's the very root of creativity. So yeah. Finally, maybe this is a little mundane, and I'm sure you've got an answer at the ready.
Sure.
What is your favorite room in the house?
In my house?
In your house?
Oh. Wow. Interesting. The deck.
Okay.
Does that count as a room?
Might as well. Yeah, it's an extension, an outdoor extension of the house.
Yeah.
Why does the deck hold a special place for you?
Because I'm sure many people's husbands are psychotic about the temperature dial in the house and keeping the windows closed and keeping the temperature very stable inside the house. And I'm a person who likes fresh air, a little air movement that doesn't have a machine behind it. I like experiencing the natural environment, you know, without having to go too far from the door. So the deck is a nice compromise. And a couple of years ago, I bought a porch swing, a standalone porch swing that really dominates our very, very tiny deck, but it's totally worth it. You know, we got rid of the grill because the porch swing is so worth it.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's, I think that's a good indication of its pride of place if it displaces the grill. Which is almost a fixture of any American deck, isn't it?
Oh, we don't use it a whole lot. So
yeah, and the porch swing, I mean, it had a fashionable period. I think, you know, I tend to think in terms of It's a Wonderful Life. Okay. Do you share my affinity for It's a Wonderful Life?
Just that whole era of movies.
Yeah, and I tended. It was such a central fixture. It was a place to court. It was a place to maybe unchaperoned or semi-chaperoned.
Yeah.
And and how many conversations took place on the porch swing because it's both sedentary and mobile. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very romantic piece of furniture in my head. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Olivia, I feel there were so many things. I'm glad we covered the ground we did.
Me too.
There were so many things that I want to visit in a future conversation.
Me too.
So I'm hoping I'll extend the invite now that you come back, you know, when you feel up to it and you're ready for another set of lightning round questions.
Love the lightning round questions.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thanks, EJ.